Hello and welcome to episode number 3 in the Let's Build Shadowgate series. In the last episode we started our world from scratch and we managed to get a start screen in. We programmed in functionality to allow the user to press space to go to the first screen of our game, and we added a game screen variable that kind of gave a serial number or numeric value to each of our screens. So we're going to start off with the world that we finished at the end of episode number 2, and in episode number 3 we're going to build a simple mouse tracker for our game going forward. The reason we're going to need a mouse tracker is primarily the game we're building is based on billboards, and Alice has the ability to determine whether or not a billboard has been clicked on inherently, but one of the things that it doesn't do inherently is recognize if a certain part of a billboard has been clicked on. For example, on that first screen we have a door, and we may want to know if the user has clicked on the door versus any other part of the billboard. In order to do that, we're going to need a mouse tracker. Now, mouse tracking was first introduced right around lesson 20 in the Alice tutorial series, but we're going to be rebuilding some of that functionality today in our Shadowgate game. So let's head on over to Alice and build a simple mouse tracker for our program to use going forward. Okay, so here we are in our Alice world. This is the same world that we ended episode 2 with, and you can see it's pretty much in the same state it was, where we do have a title screen that comes up, and we can hit space to enter the first screen, and that's about all our program does right now. What I want to do is program some functionality so that if I click on this door, not just anywhere on the screen, but specifically on this door, the door will open. In order to do that, I'm going to have to program just a basic mouse tracking method into my world. Now, this was explained in pretty great detail in the Alice tutorial series, which is also, it's a playlist that's on this channel. So if what we do in this episode doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, we spent a good, I think probably about an hour 20 minutes worth of tutorial time explaining how this works. So in order to get our mouse tracker working, we're going to go to the world object and go to properties, and we still have our game screen sitting here, but we need to create 2 new variables. So let's create our first variable, which is going to just be x. It's a numeric variable, and it will have a placeholder value of 1. This will change as soon as we hit play, so it doesn't really matter what the value is. We also want a variable y to be a numeric variable set to a value of 1. This will represent the XY coordinates of our mouse when our game is playing. Now that we have our X and Y variables set up, we're going to create a new method, and it's going to be in the world, so let's create a new method, and we're going to call this mouse tracking. This method will keep track of the X and Y coordinate of our mouse in our game. To do that, I'm going to use a do together block, and I'm going to set X equal to, for right now we're going to put in 1, but this again is just a placeholder value. And I'm going to put in a duration of 0 seconds, and I know false is kind of a default of 0 seconds, but I usually change it so I can be sure that I've changed all my durations to 0 seconds. So this is probably a little bit unnecessary, but it is a habit that I think is a good one to get into. Then we'll take our Y variable and set its value to a placeholder value of 1 over a duration of 0 seconds. Now, of course, we don't want these to be set at 1. We want to use a world function. So select the function tab here and scroll down until you get to the mouse options. And the X variable will always be set to the mouse distance from the left edge, and the Y variable will always be set to the mouse distance from the top edge. We're going to see if this works correctly, so go back to your properties and let's watch X and Y by right-clicking on them and selecting Watch This Variable. Of course, mouse tracking isn't doing anything right now because the only thing that runs when we run our program is my first method. We can also call game start with the spacebar. We want Mouse Tracker to run as fast as our computer can. We want to run it as many times per second as our computer will allow. So let's create a new event and select when the world starts off the list. Rather than have the Mouse Tracker work once, I want it to constantly run whenever my world is running. So right-click on when the world starts, select Change To, and change this to while the world is running. I'm not concerned with a begin or end, but during, I'm going to select mouse tracking, world.mouse tracking, here from the list, so that my program is constantly running the mouse tracking method that we just programmed. If I hit play, you can see that my mouse is now being tracked in real time because this mouse tracking method we just made is running as often times as it can, and usually it's between 30 and 60 times per second, depending on your computer, but it's constantly updating the XY coordinate of my mouse. The point 00 should be the top left of my screen, and it looks like it is. And then the bottom right of my screen will be some sort of maximum resolution, so in this case it's 1049, 745, and then everywhere in between, the mouse is constantly being updated. So we have a working mouse tracker now. What I want to do is I want to write down my maximum resolution. So the bottom right-hand screen, move your mouse to the bottom right-hand side of your Alice window, and just take note of that coordinate. So mine is 1049, 745. The reason I want to take note of that is in my mouse tracking method, I'm going to add a comment to the top. It said, programmed in a resolution of, and mine was 1049 by 745. Now this isn't going to affect how my program runs in the slightest, but the reason I do this is Alice programs are not particularly portable. I can't export them, I can't make them an executable file, but there are times that I may want to take it to another computer and run it on another version of Alice. Like for me, I have a laptop at home, I have a desktop at home, and then I have a work computer, and between the three I tend to work on the same program across the 3 different screens. But they all have different resolutions. This is a kind of an Alice specific problem, but when I hit play, on this screen, my point is 749, 745. When I do this on my laptop, the screen might be a lot smaller. As we start to program some of the clicks in this game, you'll find that they'll change depending on the screen that you're on. Knowing the maximum resolution, or what this resolution is, will allow me, if I ever ran this on another computer, to drag this window until the maximum resolution, or until the resolution of this screen matches the resolution of the screen that I wrote the original program on. So it may not seem like a big deal, and it probably isn't if you use Alice on the same computer every time, but do keep in mind it's a good idea to throw this in a comment up here so that if you do eventually run Alice on a different computer and try and work on this program, you'll be able to keep all the functionality that you've programmed so far. And that's going to do it for episode number 3. We pretty much just added mouse tracking functionality, so let's go ahead and save this world as Shadowgate episode 3. It was a pretty simple episode. It didn't add a whole lot to the world, but it added a lot of infrastructure that will later be used so that we can transition from screen to screen. Now in episode number 4, we're going to use this mouse tracker to allow the user to click on the door and have it open up. So we'll have to program a mouse click handler and do some of that stuff coming up. But episode 3 pretty much just saw us with the mouse tracker installed and running. If you have any questions about what you saw in this video, or there's anything that I can do to help you out or make your program run a little bit more smoothly, leave those questions down in the comment section below, and I will answer them as soon as I can. Thank you so much for your support of the Alice tutorial and the Let's Build Shadowgate series. I look forward to seeing you guys in episode number 4, and have a great day.